Just when you think you understand a situation, or just when you think maybe Gregory Polanco's time as a Pittsburgh Pirate has come to an end, maybe not just yet. We're going to touch on kind of the complicated scenario, Gregory Polanco being on waivers by the Pittsburgh Pirates. And if that era is truly coming to an end, we open up this Monday morning show with some Pirate conversation. We're also going to talk about our thoughts on JT Brubaker because, well, opening the year, the first month, he was throwing gems out there every single night, starting tonight, but not really the case most recently, certainly coming back down to earth. What is the real JT Brubaker? When will he stand up, and what will be the case with him next year? I'm Mike Asti. That's Mike Vukovcan, and this is Mic'd Up here to start our Monday morning on Pittsburgh Sports Live. And, of course, Pittsburgh Baseball Now for this show. Mic'd Up is presented by Martin Lawn Services. Their number is 412-849-5894. And Mike, we're going to start out with Polanco, of course. The news hit. He's kind of been handled odd this year, for me at least. Everybody knew this was his last year as a Pirate. That was pretty clear all the way through. Couldn't get value for him last year. Of course, struggled to start this year again. They keep him beyond the trade deadline. Probably couldn't find a suitor, couldn't get value there. I don't know how much effort they put into shopping him, but they probably realized that wasn't going to work. But then once you keep him after the trade deadline, the thinking then would be, you might as well just, I guess, let him linger the rest of the season. They're not going to do that, or at least trying to not do that. It works potentially out for him if he could land on a pennant winner and also get them freed from the books of his contract. But he also got a lot of playing time recently, which now leads me to believe maybe they were showcasing him, which had scratched a lot of our heads to this point. What do you make of the way they've handled Gregory Polanco? And do you think there's going to be a suitor? How do you think this is going to be resolved?
No, I don't. I don't think they're going to find. I don't think anyone's desperate enough to. That's a $7 million
right
investment. If you take, I guess he $7.5 million. I guess the rest of his contract for the rest of 2021 is $2.5 million. And then you pick up his, I guess to buy him out is $5 million, $4.5 million. So no, I don't see anyone doing that. I was just surprised at, as many people have touched upon, it's kind of been the Mason Rudolph topic with the Pirates as far as playing time for Gregory Polanco.
Right.
I don't understand it, but I guess maybe as you just touched, maybe they were trying at the last minute. Obviously, the Pirates, by doing this, are trying to get rid of the $5 million option for next season. If somebody has some has a hole in the outfield and maybe feel as though he can be a bench player or something. I don't understand it. Hopefully now, though, if he clears waivers tomorrow, that we see the right thing, and which means playing younger guys right, that possibly have a shot at 22. But I do give Neil Huntington, Ben Sherrington, and Derek Shelton a little bit of credit right, in that they're treating this as a human being too. I said this last week when we touched upon Polanco. He's been a good teammate, I think. I think he's a good guy. He's liked in that locker room. And the Pirates could have.
No denying that, yeah.
Yeah, the Pirates could have designated him for assignment or just outright cut him and ended his career here. But they, according to Jason Mackey, didn't want to do that.
Right.
And he's done too much, bulk of work hasn't done much. But he's been a good person. He's loved this organization. When times were bad, he didn't sulk. So I give the Pirates credit for taking the human side of this, and they could have treated him just like any other player, but they're not doing that. And apparently they're going to let him, he's professed how much he's loved this Pirate organization. Probably a lot of it has to do with Clemente, but they're going to let him, assuming nobody claims him, they're going to let him play out the rest of the year on the roster and not cut him in the middle of the season and just let him dangle. So I give the Pirates credit for the way they're handling the situation that way.
Yeah, and Ben Cherington is a guy that's been around the block a time or two. So yeah, they are handling Polanco with class, which is great. And you mentioned they could have just designated him for assignment. Not only would that have ended his Pirates career, likely could have ended his Major League Baseball career. That could have been the end for him in general. So yeah, they're giving him a shot. There have been players I mentioned on the last show. Dave Roberts, at the end of his career, kind of became that guy. He wasn't really anyone who could get on base as a hitter any longer, but late in games, defensive subs for offensive hitters that can't run the bases, especially with now the rule of getting a runner on second base immediately. So maybe you want to try to position Polanco in that spot. He can steal bases still. Top 10 in the league in stolen bases. He can still steal bases. So there might be a pennant winner. There's no salary cap in baseball. There might be a pennant winner that says, hey, if he can get a critical stolen base like Roberts did in the 04 playoffs that sent the Red Sox to win a World Series, then that'll be fine, because that's all the Red Sox ever got out of Dave Roberts, really.
Yeah.
And it ends up being an historic moment that he's loved by those fans. So maybe Polanco can be that guy. Who knows? It's probably likely that that's not going to be the scenario, and he could linger back, but his tenure as a Pirate is over going in, at the end of this year, going into next year. He won't be around, to say the least. But just thoughts here before we go to JT Brubaker on Polanco's time as a Pirate being over. While this has been over for a while, it kind of also is symbolic in a way to really now be the Ben Cherington group and the Ben Cherington regime, because Polanco was literally the last cast over from the 2013-2015 group in terms of players. The only other one would be the ownership. So Polanco's the only other one around the organization, really, in any capacity, who was around through those years. And yes, he's dealt with injuries. Yes, he's never been what he was supposed to be going after the 2018 season. He never became that perennial all-star, did flirt with it a couple years, and then injuries derailed things. Certainly a bust based on the hype, I guess you could say. But any other thoughts on that era coming to a close, just because Polanco was that last cast over?
Not so much that. I just Polanco's, and this is, and trust me, I am not sticking up for. I'm not sticking up for Bob Nutting and his spending habits.
Right.
But Polanco is an example of a guy that the Pirates tried to take a chance, like Marte, and got ahead of the curve. They signed him to a contract in April of 2016. They tried to, they thought they saw something there, and they gave him at that time what was big money, and it didn't work out. They did the same thing. I know people talk about the Pirates don't spend, and they, really
they did try with him.
They tried to invest in him, and as is with the Pirates, with their luck, he had a good 2016, his best career year.
Right.
I think 2017 was okay, and ever since 2018, he's winning the toilet.
Right.
It's just the way things have worked out with the Pirates. He was, I remember him coming up. He had as much hype as anybody.
Oh yeah,
minor leagues.
Yeah.
Where he was hitting, how big he was at the plate. He just looked like a giant up there,
and a pretty swing, which is ironic.
Yes.
How he lost his swing at the end of his career, because at that time it was a Ken Griffey Jr. swing. It was a fluid, flowing swing, and you knew crack of the bat that ball was gone when he would hit a dinger. That swing totally went away. But yeah,
it's it's what happened. I don't know. Hopefully he catches on. I don't know. He's still young enough though. 29 years old. His baseball career isn't done. It's not as though he's 35 years old.
Right.
He'll catch on with somebody. I don't even see the Pirates, even if they offered him minimum or whatever. I'm sure he'd want to come back, but he just doesn't make. His biggest problem is he doesn't make enough contact. He strikes out too much. I think he has the third worst strikeout rate in baseball.
Yeah.
You just can't, if you're making outs, productive outs or whatever, he just too many swing and misses. Wish him luck. I kind of liked him a lot. The El Cafe and everything.
Yeah, El Cafe. Yeah, very popular player, and probably popular because he was somebody they did pay. Everyone talks about after the 2015 season, maybe they blew it up too early, but he was somebody that they were willing to give money to and invest in.
Marte too.
And then of course him eventually leaving after that. But there was a suspension mixed in, which kind of set the motion of his exit.
Exactly.
But
the question now is whether or not Brian Reynolds now is going to be the next, because if you look in this, I'm going to have something on.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to have something on Pittsburgh baseball now a little bit later today about the payroll for next year, and with Polanco's double-digit salary off the books for next year, they don't have a lot coming back as far as salary goes for next year. So, Brian Reynolds could be it. They could be looking to maybe sign a couple of the guys that maybe like him, Stallings, somebody else that are vetted, Gamble, Moran, somebody like that to multi-year deals. Not a lot, but just to keep them around depending on where they are in their situation. But I wouldn't be surprised if Reynolds is the Pirates' attempt of Gregory Polanco and Starling Marte to try to get ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and again, especially when it comes to Reynolds and Stallings, who are going to be those guys, that'll be the conversation if the Pirates ownership is going to do it a little differently, and if Cherington's convinced anybody to do it a little differently and continue this process of the rebuild, they're going to have to bring back those and re-sign those players. And the earlier you do it, which has been a criticism of the Pirates before, you wait so long, if they're playing well, it peaks the value. The earlier you do it, potentially, you could try to get them for a little bit less. Who knows? Obviously, the ages are different with those two, but that's a Pirate fan's hope, is to have those two resign and try it again with those two. But two things I wouldn't be surprised by is if one of those two guys they don't do that with, and the other thing I wouldn't be surprised by, just the Pirates' luck, is if Polanco does catch on somewhere, does have a critical stolen base, or somehow cracks one and has a big hit and somehow finds his swing, because again, that's the most confusing part. You get the injuries. To lose a swing as fluid as Polanco at the time is very bizarre. I almost think maybe at some point they should have sent him to that sports psychologist that worked on Marc-Andre Fleury ahead of the injuries and everything else that went on. But Polanco's time as a Pirate is seemingly over, and even if it's not, it's probably over on this show, unless something else would wacky occur. But yeah, good guy. We do wish him well, and of course, El Cafe. We'll see if that catches on wherever he ends up as well. Of course, this is Mic'd Up here, presented by Martin Lawn Services, Mike V, and I am Mike A. And we're now going to round the bases, something Polanco didn't do enough of in his Pirate tenure, certainly in those last few years. See, that's a veteran segue here, even
I like that
on a Monday morning. Is somebody else who doesn't round the bases as a hitter, but certainly helps the Pirates as a pitcher, or at least was for a while. And that's JT Brubaker, who earlier on in the season, people were talking about, okay, they finally found some legitimate starters. JT, Tyler Anderson, they were pitching kind of above expectations for the first couple of months of the season, even if they're not the number 1 and 2 when the team eventually wins. They should be legitimate rotation guys when the team eventually wins, certainly a part of the future for next year. Since those conversations, he has really come back down to earth, has been struggling. Obviously, the win-loss record's not there, but the ERA is not even really there anymore either. He is starting tonight. Which JT Brubaker do you think is the real one for the future? Is he more of the guy that at one point was legit a top 5 pitcher in baseball the first month? Obviously, that might be a little crazy, but can he be a legitimate, serviceable starting pitcher for this team somewhere in the rotation? Or are you starting to have concerns that he is plummeting so much that maybe he was pitching so much above himself and this might be the real JT? And if that's the case, then you're really worried where he fits in.
Yeah, this is one of the more disappointing things, because as the season was going on, I was penciling him in as somebody that I was never looking at him as a top 3 guy, but I was hoping he was
at least in the rotation.
Yeah, he was a 4 or 5 guy, good guy that's going to get innings eater.
Right.
However, his past 12 starts, he's 0-9 with a 7.08 ERA.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the ERA. Right.
And the most concerning part, obviously a 7.08 ERA is concerning, right, but 18 home runs. He just cannot keep the ball in the ballpark. And I don't know if this is a combination. I don't know if this is a byproduct of him just becoming fatigued. First real stint in the major leagues, and the innings are starting to pile up on him, because to his credit, he's went out there every 5 days for the Pirates and he's pitched. He hasn't had a break, an injury, a
No.
make injury or anything like that. So maybe I think we're almost getting to the time now where it's almost time just to shut him down and just let somebody else go in there for the last month and say, hey, JT, you gave us a good effort the first or this season, and let's get ready for 2022. I don't know. I think he has to come back, and I think he's going to give a chance to.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think he's a guy that at his best is going to be somebody with a high 3 ERA. That's at his best. More likely, he's probably somebody with a 4 ERA that's going to take up a lot of innings. But if he continues to give up home runs like that, you just can't justify him staying in the rotation. So I don't know. Maybe he'll have a good last month of the season because they need somebody like him. Because if you look at it, Mike, there's nobody. There's nobody actually that you could maybe Stephen Brault is to say, okay, 2022 is here. Let's pencil in 5 guys in the rotation. And there's nobody aside from maybe Brault that there's a consensus on to say.
Yeah, Mitch Keller is a question mark.
Yeah.
Oh, and again, JT, it almost seemed like they kind of lucked into, okay, the first month or two of the season, okay, at worst, he's going to be in this rotation next year. And he was pitching really, really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, those last 12 starts have been rough. The reality is he probably was only a 4 or 5 guy on a good team, but that would have been great if the Pirates left the season with him being a legitimate 4 or 5 guy on a good team, because as you're mentioning, now they're leaving the season with real question marks on who is in the rotation, who can they count on. Maybe if you have a guy that can eat innings previously and now can still throw solid stuff, if you kind of calm down the home runs being allowed, maybe the worst case is he would become a reliever and can be a dominant reliever. But of course, that's not really what the Pirates want.
Yeah.
They do need someone to legitimize the rotation. It can't just be continuously, okay, you're starting as a rotation guy. You do it for a while. You don't get it done. Now we'll save your life and make you a reliever again. And it's, well, everyone's in the bullpen. Somebody eventually is going to have to start these games. Yeah. So JT's overall spread here, you're mentioning maybe a 4 ERA as something he can do on a consistent basis in the regular season. Well, that probably would be good and be a hope for the Pirates. Right now, a 5.49 overall in this season, 4-13, 118 strikeouts, 33 walks, and a 127 whip. So where he was beginning of the season, really come back down to earth now. In fact, a little bit less than earth now. They do need more from him. That's an interesting thing you bring up, though. We'll see. I haven't heard that yet, that maybe you would shut him down. If it gets much worse, maybe you would, because you don't want to just let this unravel, certainly in his psyche, but you'd also like to see him pitch out of it and end the season.
You got to remember last year was a weird year as far as as far as innings pitched and just everything. These guys are extending themselves a little bit. And Brubaker, this is his first real go. So I still think he's a major league. I've seen enough stuff of him that, I'm sure they could die during the offseason. They'll spot something as far as the home run ball. But he has major league stuff that is good enough to be in a rotation. There's no question about that.
Yeah. He just needs to figure it out. But
absolutely. Yeah, and I think he will.
Absolutely.
And I think he's a guy. And the other guy that's hopefully he, parlays on what he did last game is Keller.
Last game was ridiculous. Yeah.
I wrote something last week that they have to continue to just give that guy the ball and let him pitch. They don't have any 20-some-year-old guys that had the potential of him. And they can't just give up on a guy after a year or look to trade him. They have to try to figure it out with him, go in the next season. And if he continue, if we're at this point next year still talking about Mitch Keller, the prospect, then it might be time to get rid of him. But there should be no thought within that organization about this offseason looking to deal him. They got to look to fix him, and hopefully this last month or month and a half, he does a lot more what he did against St. Louis, and then he's a guy that can, who knows, be a 2-3 in the rotation.
Yeah, and that's going to be a question. The shortstop position, the rotation, all going to be questions going into the offseason. Obviously, the Pirates have been using this season, we talked about it last show, as a tryout basis. They've been doing auditions for a lot of these players, which makes sense. Some of them playing maybe more than they expected, which was great. And some of them dipping below the expectations. They at least found that Reynolds can be that guy for the future. They weren't sure of that entering the season. So if nothing else, they got that out of this year, and they can't give up on others either. They do need to have starters for next year. It can't all be, they have a solid farm now and a solid draft base, but you do need to have someone play baseball next year before you really get in there. So we will see who that ends up being and what ends up happening here. That'll do it for this edition of the show. Of course, the Pirates now will take on the Arizona Diamondbacks in this upcoming series, continuing that West team swing situation. And we'll see. We get a start from Will Crow. We get a start from JT Brubaker. We'll see what happens and what happens with Gregory Polanco, because that just when you think maybe his time as a Pirate is over, that we have seen weirder things occur in sports and certainly around the Pirates. If he swings a bat here in a couple of days wearing that Pirate jersey again, but you'd figure it's done as him playing either way. But yeah, props in the Pirates for the way they're handling things. That's Mike Vukovcan. I'm Mike Asti. And again, Mic'd Up is presented by Martin Lawn Services,